Hello and welcome to our extended disc webinar. Today's 15-minute webinar is on the Sales 18 disc assessment. My name is Christina and I'm the training director here at Extended Disc, and joining me today is my colleague Marku Kauppanen, president of Extended Disc.
Hi, Christina. How are you?
Hi, it seems like it's been a little while, but we're getting back into the swing of things.
That's right. Time flies by.
We are recording this webinar, but it's only 15 minutes, so we're going to move at a pretty brisk pace. We won't have time for questions, so feel free to put your questions in the questions section, and we'll follow up after the webinar. So we've done a lot of webinars in the past on different types of DISC assessments. And as you guys all know, we are constantly tailoring new assessments. So Marku, tell us today kind of why you selected the Sales 18 for today's topic.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is, of course, it's kind of a blessing and a curse when we are creating assessments at a pretty fast and furious pace when we roll out almost one a week, if not more. And the great thing is that our clients have a lot of options for very specific assessments for their unique needs. The flip side is that it's difficult, not sometimes even for us, to keep up with all the different options we have. And Sales 18 is one of those assessment tools that I think many people don't know about it because it's fairly new. It's actually quite new. But when we're working with clients who do a lot of work with salespeople, they told me many times that they really like this tool. And ultimately, I really want to make sure our clients and even our prospects know that this kind of a tool is available.
Okay, so Marku, why don't we just at least start with an overview of what the Sales 18 is?
Yeah, let's just jump right in because we only have 15 minutes, like you said. First of all, this tool is based on the DISC model and DISC theory. So if we wanted to use this assessment, we use that same 24-question survey to generate this report. Of course, what we can do with our platform, once a person completes a questionnaire just one time, our clients can reorder the results in different formats at no additional cost. So when we work with our salespeople, most commonly our clients use the sales professional assessment that really has specific things about how a salesperson can understand what their natural behavioral style is in terms of the DISC framework. You have the DISC profiles in there. And we use that four-step process to help a salesperson to, one, understand that prospects and customers are different. Second, we provide them with a very confident self-awareness so they understand how they tend to sell. Third, how to identify the styles of prospects. And of course, the fourth and most important step, now that I know all of this, how do I actually modify the way I sell? Sales 18 is a little bit different in a sense that even that it's based on DISC model and theory, the clients do not have to know DISC. They don't need to understand the DISC model, this theory. They do not need to know anything about the DISC styles, yet they can get very easy to use intuitive information about a sales professional's natural comfort levels in specific sales areas. In fact, there are 18 specific areas we look at that are very critical to salesperson success, and that's why it's called Sales 18.
And I just, as you guys know, I work a lot with you as a consultant, as a trainer, and I just love being able to offer this additional option for a sales consultant. So Marku, let's just show them what the Sales 18, the 18 part of the Sales 18 is.
Sure. Here are the 18 competencies, areas of, again, critical to sales success, things like prospecting, qualifying, and all of these 18 competencies are very clearly identified and defined in the report itself. We wanted to make sure that clients do not have to refer to a lot of other support materials to understand what the information really means. So when we look at these 18 competencies, one thing I would say that is important for us to understand that if you look at, for example, prospecting, the first one on that left column there, prospecting may be a very critical area for someone's success in, let's say, first 6 months, first couple of years when they are starting their sales career. They don't have an existing client base, so they really have to go and really prospect and find new leads and obviously develop those. Somebody who's been a sales professional for a long time in the same company, for example, typically the importance of prospecting tends to decrease because they get a lot of their new business from referrals and other sources. So that's the only thing I would say that we need to understand, that not all of these are equally important for every salesperson. However, overall, these are very critical areas for sales success.
Okay, so this is where the 18 comes from, these 18 critical sales competences. So, Marku, let's show them what the actual report looks like.
Yeah, let's jump in right there. And this is where you can really see that you don't need to understand anything about the DISC model. We would have 18 pages, one page for each of the 18 areas. Here we look at an example of prospecting. And what we simply do is we break that prospecting area into specific behavioral dimensions. As you can see here, we have about 20 of them. And what we'll show is that how comfortable a person is with their natural behavioral style or their natural DISC style, if you will, in these areas. So, for example, and by the way, this is how we represent this. It's those blocks we kind of rectangles, if you will, shows how comfortable a person is with each behavioral dimension. As we look at this particular individual, we can visually right away clearly see that they really are not very comfortable with prospecting, because ideally what you would like to see is that the person has their +5 score on all of those areas. Let's go back. It was one.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, the other arrow there. That's what we ideally would see. But this person is not as naturally comfortable with this area. But what we ultimately calculate is what we call a match percentage. And now if we zoom in, we can clearly see it. At the bottom of that page, we calculate a match percentage. This individual for prospecting only gets 23% match percentage. And what that means in practice, that this person, because of their hardwired natural behavioral style, it is such that getting out there, knocking on doors, getting new prospects is something that is not comfortable for this person. They really need to modify their behavior. They need to spend energy to make those behavioral adjustments in order to succeed in prospecting. Doesn't mean that he or she cannot be successful at it, but we do know it's going to take conscious effort, concentration, and energy to make that happen.
So I'm just going to jump back for a second. Sorry, I lost an arrow on my PowerPoint slide. But what I like about this, for those of us who may not be as familiar, is at the very top, as Marku mentioned, it very clearly outlines what that sales competence is. So, prospecting, it gives you the definition, and then it shows the box where you sit relative to the arrow that's missing. Is all you can see all the numbers of 5 all the way to the right are shaded in pink, which tells you in order for this person to be comfortable with prospecting, they should be as close to those 5s as possible.
Yeah, ideally, a person would score 5s all the way down the line, but in reality, it's difficult to find a person like that. I think we have another example when somebody has a higher match, but typically, in reality, it's really difficult to find something. Now we're looking at another area, one of the 18 areas, and this is process orientation. And now we have an individual who's a lot more comfortable with this particular area. In fact, a lot of his or her scores are those +5s, and that's why you notice that they fall in that same area, and actually see easily that match percentage 100. There's a lot of 100% matches in those specific behavioral dimensions, and ultimately we get to a very high score of 91% when we go here, which would tell me that this person, when it comes to process orientation, very comfortable with that. If anything, he or she may need to make sure they don't overuse this strength, because sometimes what people tend to do is that when they are comfortable with certain areas of their job, they actually tend to spend maybe a little bit too much time and focus in that area because they typically enjoy that kind of behavior.
So just a quick summary for those of us that are hearing it for the first time, Marku, is if you have a low match percentage, it basically is telling you that sales competence tends not to be comfortable for you. And it's something that you're going to have to push yourself outside your comfort zone and make adjustments to be more effective in that competence.
More effective and more successful, yes, absolutely. And one way to look at it is that when you get a score that is below 33%, essentially we're dividing in the thirds. Anything below 33%, that's an area that's going to require fairly significant amount of energy. Anything above 67% typically is a very clear strength for the individual, because their natural behavioral style is such that that area of selling is comfortable for them. They really do not have to modify their behavioral style in order to be successful in that particular area.
And what I like about offering this tool to our clients is they have found different ways to use it. Number one, as Marku says, They love it because it's very comfortable. It's easy to understand right off the bat. You don't even have to know DISC. But it also helps them to zone in. Like, for instance, if you look at, the process orientation, they can zone in on specific behaviors under process orientation just to kind of take that even deeper dive, to focus in on.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's why we have that, because if you want to develop a particular area, we need to look where the low scores are so we can be very focused in our development areas, development efforts, I should say. And the idea with this is, like you just pointed out, as you see, there's nothing about DISC here. Sales manager, sales coach, salesperson does not need to understand anything about the DISC model because they get very clear match percentages for these different 18 areas. Very easy for people to use.
Yeah, so it's been a great tool that we've introduced. There is, however, an optional section that we have that I wanted Marku just to kind of cover briefly for those of us that are familiar and we rely on using DISC, or we are comfortable using DISC.
Yeah, we have a section for an additional page for all of those 18 areas that shows what are the required behaviors for a particular area. Like here we are looking at process orientation. The top half of the page shows that what kind of behaviors will result in success in this example with process orientation. The bottom half of the page shows who the person actually is when it comes to the hardwired natural DISC style. So we can see how much they overlay, if any, to really visually understand how much adjustment the person needs to make in order to succeed in that area. The way a lot of people look at it is, how do I get out of my comfort zone? And here we can visually see how much this person actually needs to adjust in order to be successful, again, with process orientation in this example.
Yeah, and I love, again, visually. Honestly, if you still didn't know DISC or you aren't as comfortable, you can clearly see that overlap is within that lower left quadrant, and the pushing outside the comfort zone is going to have to occur in the lower right to the upper left.
Yeah, if you think about this, if person knows DISC and we think about process orientation without getting in with all the weeds, process orientation typically is more S&C behavior, so it makes sense. So in this individual, the primary style is an I. If you think of I styles, what they do not like to do is routines, details, all of the kind of a day-to-day, somewhat mundane things, and they tend to ignore it. And that's the result, that this person would not get a very high match percentage for process orientation. Doesn't mean, again, they can't do it,
Absolutely.
But it's going to take a little bit of an adjustment.
So, the goal today, of course, very quick, is at least to give you an introduction. If you want to learn more, what can they do, Marku?
Simply contact us. And if they're already using our assessments, they can, of course, take an existing client. Maybe you already provide them with the sales professional assessment, and you want to kind of take it to the next level to provide clearer understanding. How do we need to develop a person to help to coach them, develop them to become even more successful? You can get these results, and once you use it with one client, one employee, you can very quickly understand how easy it is. And again, what we're looking at here, this is an optional section. Only thing, if you can use it, but you don't need to. If you only want to focus on the match percentages in the 18 areas for sales success, you can very easily do it.
Yeah, and in case you guys did catch it, it's very clear. The person only needs to have taken the extended DISC questionnaire one time, and you can run this additional report without any additional cost.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right. So what do we have up next, Marku?
Well, we have a next webinar in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about certification. A lot of people want to get certified, and we get a lot of questions about certification. As you know, Christina, we don't require certification. We do recommend it. The reason we don't require it is because almost 100% of our clients use DISC in the past, and they simply upgraded to extended DISC, and they learn it very quickly. Some people want to become more comfortable and confident using the tools, and they do want to get certified. So in that 15-minute webinar, we're going to really talk about what the certification really is, what are the benefits, and why someone should choose to get certified, and also what the options are. Whether it's virtual, face-to-face, we'll talk about those things.
Well, I obviously recommend it as a trainer. All right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Marku. If you want to learn about the upcoming webinar or any webinars in the future or any of our activities at conferences, you can go to extendeddisc.org and look under our events section.
Yeah, that's on the top right corner. Click on there. You see all the things that are happening. And that's it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.